What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Monday edition. I had to think what day it was of the Stokastic NHL Strategy Show. I am your host, Josh Harris. Joining me, as always, Slim Cliffy. How was your weekend?
Pretty good weekend. Finally in March. We touched on this briefly last week, or on Saturday maybe. But March is a pretty good month. I know the weather can be kind of up and down, but NHL playoff races are really tight, particularly in the Eastern Conference, not so much in the West. Baseball starts here in a few weeks. NBA is getting into crunch time. There's just a whole lot of sports going on this month, and it's a pretty good time to be a sports fan, pretty good time to be a hockey fan, honestly. You and I have made fun of the playoff format that the NHL uses and how that can kind of just drive the same teams toward each other year after year. But it's making for interesting playoff races in the Eastern Conference this season, at least. I mean, I think it's 6 teams within 4 points of each other for 2 playoff spots. So these next 5 weeks in the NHL are going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah. Like last season, the playoffs were pretty much determined by Christmas, I think, or something like that. I don't even remember, but it was something pretty early. So nice to have some meaningful hockey. Tampa not giving a crap, it seems like. They had 4 shots on goal through 2 periods. Yesterday got blanked by the Hurricanes. They'll be fine. They're just kind of like working on some stuff, I guess. Like they had different lines. They're seeing what's viable. Whatever. Also, it was back-to-back on the road Sunday afternoon. Hard to get up for that type of game.
I'm not that worried about Tampa. Like Los Angeles used to do this like 10 years ago. I think when the year Los Angeles won their second Stanley Cup, there's like a 25 game stretch after Christmas where they only won like 9 or 10 games or something like that. Because, they're just kind of bored and just running out the rest of the regular season. Like Chicago used to do the same thing, like 2014, 2015, 2016. Colorado did that last year. I remember you and I talking about Colorado last year because like their final 20, 25 games of the season, they didn't look very good. And then they went into the playoffs and just absolutely wrecked everybody. So like, I wouldn't be too worried about Tampa Bay not looking great over like their last, 6 or 8 games or whatever. I'm not that concerned about it.
Yeah, I'm not either. They'll be ready for the Leafs. Will the Leafs be ready for Tampa? I don't know. Ryan O'Reilly, long-term IR, broke his finger. So we'll see. We have a 6-game slate today. At least 4 of the games are absolutely wild. This is a great MME slate. If you are a 20 to 150 maxer, for a one lineup guy like myself, it's going to be pretty difficult to get down to one lineup, but that's why we have these shows. We'll help you through it, and we'll see what we can do. But before we get into it, make sure to hit that like button on your way in. Also subscribe. It helps keep up with all of our DFS off give more. Also hit that notification button to get alerts when our show goes live. We also have a platform of your choice. So if you are driving home from work and can't catch the show live, hello. Yeah, we're here. Also, shout out to PrizePicks, our sponsor of our show. We'll have an offer for you a little bit. Get into this late, shall we? Yeah, we shall. Edmonton Oilers with a 3.8 total heading into Buffalo. The Sabres have a 3.2 total. Stu Skinner, Craig Anderson probable. Evander Kane skated this morning, but he is not going to be back in tonight. Looks like the top line is going to be Connor McDavid, Zach Hyman, and Ryan McLeod. Not that it matters because, Connor McDavid and Zach Hyman will play with everybody. Leon Draisaitl and Nugent Hopkins will probably play with everybody as well. On the flip side, Matthias Samuelsson is out tonight. That hurt them on the blue line. Tyson Yost also out tonight with a nagging injury, but Jordan Greenway makes his way into the lineup in his spot. Wouldn't be shocked to see them be the shutdown line at least a little bit here tonight. It doesn't matter because McDavid plays like 25 minutes. Top line of Skinner, Quinn, and Thompson still. Looking at ownership here, we got some chalk McDavid here tonight. It is what it is. Like, you know what I mean? He has over 120 points on the season. We're barely into March. This is a very good matchup. Both these teams are very good offensively, a bit suspect defensively. I don't want to say like I'm going to outright fade McDavid, but when McDavid is coming in at 30% and the flip side, Tage Thompson's coming in at 7% against this Oilers team. Granted, they've been a bit better with Matthias Ekholm defensively, but like I think saving the 1,500 and saving a quarter of the ownership going to Tage Thompson, like this is a 7 over under. It's going to be a high scoring game, so I think maybe I'll take the ownership here.
Yeah, there is a lot to like on both sides. Don't get me wrong. And the point you made about lines is something that we bring up every time Edmonton's been on his slate, basically for like 2 months now. And the lines do matter and they don't, because when things are going well, they do try to at least keep pairs of players together. Now, those pairs have fluctuated through the season, but right now it's McDavid and Hyman and Draisaitl and Nugent Hopkins. Those are the two pairs that they're kind of trying to build around. You just have to look at the last game to see, how much line combinations are worth. Draisaitl, Nugent Hopkins, Yamamoto started the game together. By the middle of the second period, they didn't play another shift together. McDavid was moved on to a line with Draisaitl or something like that. Like that's what the team will do. Like if Edmonton can get out to like a 4-0 lead in this game or something like that, then yeah, maybe the line combinations stay pretty constant right through the game. If this game is close or Buffalo has a lead, they're going to go back to Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, X, whether it's Hyman or Nugent Hopkins or Yamamoto or whomever. That they're going to do it. So, it's always that case of what do you play in Edmonton besides the power play guys? I mean, Yamamoto would obviously make sense. And the thing with Yamamoto is, yes, the line combinations haven't been consistent, but he is getting ice time, right? 23 minutes in the last game, 18 minutes in the game before that, nearly 20 minutes 4 games ago, 18 minutes 5 games ago. Like he's been getting a lot of ice time. It's just inconsistent line mates. He'll be with McDavid, then Draisaitl, and maybe take a spin on the third line, and then a couple McDavid shifts, and then, benched one shift, and then that's just kind of the way it goes. So, you can put Yamamoto there. I don't think you have to put Derek Ryan there. Derek Ryan looks like he's going to start with McDavid. I don't know how long he actually lasts there. And McDavid and Hyman are pretty good together, basically, no matter who's there beside them. They're up over 200 minutes without Draisaitl or Nugent Hopkins. So basically anybody but the other two power play guys. 3.5 expected goals for per 60 minutes, 2.6 against, which is, the expected goals against are right about league average. Like that's not bad. And like you said, Matthias Ekholm is going to help defensively. And I think it's not just adding Matthias Ekholm, but it's taking away Tyson Barrie too, right? Like Tyson Barrie, I don't want to slag the guy. He's a good offensive defenseman, and there is a reason why he was a staple of the top power play unit. Not a staple, but was often there over the last couple of years. It's because he is a good offensive player. He's just not a good defensive defenseman. Ekholm is, and that's a pretty big change to make. And it's not just adding Ekholm's defensive prowess, it's taking away Barrie's lack of defensive prowess, right? So this Edmonton team had been pretty good defensively anyways. Like, I know sometimes it can seem they struggle, but I wonder how much is just those games happen to be started by Jack Campbell. You know what I mean? Like,
that's a good point. Yeah. It's been awful.
Right. Like, their expected goals against over the last 41 games, half the season, is third in the league behind only Carolina and Calgary. Actual goals against per 60 minutes of 5-on-5 at about 2.5 per 60 minutes, which is about league average. And I think if you take the Campbell games out, it'd be a lot better than that. So I don't think this is necessarily a bad defensive team. The problem is Edmonton takes a lot of penalties. They're at, I think it's 3.5 times shorthanded per game. It's like the 5th or 6th most in the NHL. Penalty kill's fine, but certainly not great. I think Buffalo can take advantage of that. So while I don't think it's a great matchup at 5-on-5, I think it's a pretty good matchup for the Buffalo power play. And you get Thompson and Skinner on that top line on the top power play unit. So I think that's the reason why I would play them, is because it's a pretty good special teams matchup for the Sabres. So I don't mind using the top line. You get 2 out of the 3 guys on the power play. You can put Quinn in with them because he's cheap enough where a couple of his, even assists in like 4 shots or something like that, or just happens to score a goal and adds another shot or something, and he smashes value. So he doesn't really need a ton. So I don't mind just leaving Quinn there. If you want to turn it into a better power play stack and add Olofsson or add Cousins, no problems with that. But I think it's a pretty good special team matchup for Buffalo. So I think that's why I would play them. On the Edmonton side, it's also a good special teams matchup for them. The Buffalo penalty kill is pretty bad and has been pretty bad basically all season long. And no, they don't take a lot of penalties, but Edmonton tends to draw a lot of power plays. They only need 3, maybe 4 power plays to get at least 1 goal on the board, if not 2 here tonight. So yes, those top guys, we'll just say it again, the top PP guys from Edmonton, but I do think there are, you can add in a Yamamoto or something like that if you want to save some money rather than play a super expensive Hyman or a super expensive Draisaitl or something like that. I think that's something you definitely can do. Throw Bouchard on the blue line as well for power play exposure. It is the power play guys I like here specifically. What I'll mention is that Cousins, Hinostroza, and Middlestat, like Cousins and Hinostroza have pretty bad defensive numbers together this season. I think that could make it a pretty good 5-on-5 matchup for Edmonton as well. So there is a ton of ownership on the Edmonton side. I really don't mind the ownership because it's only 6 games, and I think there are enough ways you can play different combinations to get unique, especially when you look with cheap lines elsewhere in the slate. So I do think I prefer the Edmonton side here, but I agree with you that both, top lines, both top power play units are very much in play here. And if you want to save the ownership and go to Buffalo, I wouldn't begrudge anybody for doing that.
Yeah, and Edmonton power play can destroy anybody. I bet Draisaitl under 1.5 points on Friday against Winnipeg with Hellebuyck in net. Excellent penalty kill. Hellebuck's one of the best goalies in the world. It took years off my life. I lost a bet in the 3rd period. Betting Edmonton unders is probably the main reason why I have these bags under my eyes. Like, they can just destroy everybody. So like ownership doesn't really matter if you want to play Edmonton. There's ways to get different. There's ways to fill out your lineup. We'll talk about blue liners, obviously, but another good thing about Barrie leaving, it's let Evan Bouchard take over the top power play. So there's that. I mean, you can just, I don't know if you can fit it. We can try with the lineup builder in a little bit to fit full Edmonton power play. We'll have to see, what you can fit in there with them. But, if you don't mind that ownership, like the best plays, the highest ownership plays are generally really good plays anyway. And this is a very good spot. So like, to get different, I guess you could full power play. Let me see. I'm putting them on my screen. It's not up on the screen.
Yeah, you can do it, but if you go full power play 1 and then stay locked at 6,900 on DraftKings, you're left basically min price for your other 3 roster slots.
Yeah,
you can go up to 2,600 for each of the 3 remaining roster slots. You can do it. It's pretty tight.
Yeah.
So
I don't think I'll be betting the Draisaitl unders tonight. But Yeah. We can move on. We'll try a lineup a little bit later. We have the San Jose Sharks with a 2.6 total heading into.
Sorry. Just before we get to the next game, one thing I do want to mention is Jordan Greenway jumping in the lineup for Buffalo, right? He's going to be joining. Yeah, he's going to be joining Girgensons and Okposo. But we talked about this on the show before. Buffalo has Girgensons and Okposo lined up as quote unquote their fourth line, but they don't play fourth line minutes, right? That's something that we do have to keep in mind. They haven't been getting a lot of ice time lately, but I think Okposo's still been around 14 minutes of late. It wouldn't surprise me to see Greenway, Okposo, and Girgensons used in a shutdown role here tonight. We don't know if it's going to happen or not, but it could free up Thompson against the depth. I guess we won't know until the game happens, but it's just something that I thought it would be worth mentioning.
Yeah. It's probably more likely to happen when Yost is fully healthy. You get Yost, Greenway, and one of those guys. That's going to be a pretty good shutdown line going forward. San Jose Sharks with a 2.6 total heading into Winnipeg. The Jets have a 3.5 total. James Reimer and big save Dave Rittich is confirmed. Looks like Pierre-Luc Dubois is back. So Jets going with Nino Niederreiter, Mark Scheifele with Kyle Connor, and then Nikolai Ehlers with Pierre-Luc Dubois and Blake Wheeler. I would imagine Pierre-Luc Dubois will slide in onto the top power play for either Niederreiter or Wheeler.
It's Wheeler.
Wheeler's off the top power play?
Yeah.
We did it. We did it. Ehlers still not on the top power play. That still sucks, but I think Niederreiter is a better addition on the top power play than Wheeler. Sharks going with Couture, Barabanov, and Andreas Janssen, Tomas Hertl, Fabian Zetterlund, William Eklund. Now, if Hellebuck was confirmed here, I would have almost no interest in the Sharks here. But Hertl, Eklund, two men on the power play, pretty cheap here. They're going to give William Eklund a shot to prove his worth. He's a prospect. I think there's stuff to like on both sides here.
Yeah, there is. And one thing we should mention is Winnipeg has been on a little bit of a defensive slide of late. I was looking at the stats earlier today. Over their last 20 games, they're in the bottom 10 of the league by expected goals against at 5-on-5, right down there with teams like Florida and St. Louis. It's been pretty brutal stretch. And as you mentioned, Rittich is starting. That does make a little bit of a difference. There is a lot of ownership on Winnipeg expected here tonight. Not an unreasonable amount, but I'll bring up Top Stacks tool real quick. Top owned line is going to be some combination of Edmonton. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. And then there's going to be a lot of ownership on Chicago because of how cheap their top line is. And then Winnipeg's top line coming in next for ownership at 17% on DraftKings. So there's going to be a lot of ownership here, especially where they're not that expensive. That top line is perfectly correlated for Winnipeg and under 18K. So you can fit them with a Buffalo one or something like that. So it makes them pretty versatile in that sense. So I get why there's a lot of ownership because you can fit them in with a lot of different things. I think you can even fit them in with a McDavid, Hyman, Yamamoto stack or something like that. So I suspect there's going to we have 17% Winnipeg one. It wouldn't shock me if that's, between 20 and 25%, honestly, because I do think it's arguably the most versatile line on this slate because it is perfectly correlated at not a super expensive price. So I think you're going to see a lot of people use them either as a primary stack and use expensive defensemen or as a secondary stack to a primary stack like Dallas or Buffalo or Edmonton or something like that. So I don't mind playing them because for a few reasons. One, you mentioned Niederreiter. I think one thing we should mention is that his playmaking numbers have kind of fallen off over the last couple of years, though you do wonder if it's just not how the coaches wanted to use him and where he's played as opposed to, a decline in skills because he's still driving play very, very well. So he should be able to drive the play with the top line. Obviously we don't have a sample with Niederreiter there. He's only played a handful of games with the Jets and he's been moved around the lineup, but the top line for Winnipeg's about 3 goals per 60 minutes of 5-on-5 with Scheifele and Connor without Blake Wheeler there, anybody but Blake Wheeler. And Sorry. And that's what's shooting about league average.
To me.
Yeah. And that's what's shooting about league average. Like if they can juice it up to like 9.5%, 10% shooting, it would be a great offensive line. So I do think Winnipeg's perfectly fine to use, even if they come in between 15 and 20% owned. I just suspect it may come in a little bit higher than that, especially in some single entries or contests like that. So just be aware of that. I don't know if I have a ton of interest in the second line. Even with Pierre-Luc Dubois back, there is, not a lot of reasonable ownership on that line, 2 to 3%. They're about the same price as the top line, but you only get one guy on the top power play unit. I don't think it's a terrible special teams matchup. The San Jose penalty kill has generally been pretty good this year. It hasn't been super elite lately, as it had been maybe, up until the All-Star break or something like that. But still pretty good, and they don't take a lot of penalties. So, where they're the same price, I don't have a problem going in like a Dubois, Ehlers, Wheeler combination. The problem is, Ehlers might only play 13 minutes, right? Blake Wheeler doesn't shoot a ton. I think they're fine to play, but I would honestly rather just go to the top line and just choke the ownership and then try to get unique elsewhere. I think that's just the way to go. Ehlers, the coach was talking, and he was talking that he's still kind of recovering from his injury. Like he's not feeling quite the same. If you look at his defensive metrics, they're horrific this year. Like I don't mean like below average or something. I mean amongst the worst in the league for any forward. Yeah, I think the injury might be playing into that. So Winnipeg won, or else just a pass. The question is what to do with San Jose, because Couture and Barabanov, even as the team's been shedding their players over the last month in trades, Couture and Barabanov in their last 100 minutes together, 3.8 expected goals for, 3.9 actual goals for, still generating and shooting a lot. The problem is they got Andreas Janssen there, and I'm not sure Janssen's going to stick there. What I will say about Janssen is like he generally wasn't a bad player. I don't know what happened in New Jersey, but he had decent offensive playmaking metrics and shooting metrics and play driving metrics earlier in his career, and then it all fell apart these last couple seasons. I don't know. Maybe there's some injury that's been lingering. Maybe there's something else going on off ice that we don't know about. But this was a good offensive player for a few years, if in a lesser role. And I'm wondering if, he can kind of reclaim that on a line that's been playing very well offensively. So with Winnipeg's problems defending for like the last 6 weeks, basically, no Connor Hellebuck in net. And that San Jose, Couture Barabanov line only coming in at 2 to 3%. I think Couture Barabanov Janssen makes a really nice filler here tonight. If you want to go to Hurdle, Eklund, and Zetterlund, I have no problem with that. Eklund played a lot last game. I think he was at like 19 minutes or something like that. He's a top prospect for a reason. I don't mind playing them, but I think just kind of the somewhat known quantity of Couture and Barabanov and hopeful rebound from Janssen makes that line, I think, my target here from the San Jose side, and one of the filler stacks I don't mind playing here tonight.
I'm wondering if it was like he was in the limp doghouse. Like could have been.
I have no idea what's going on.
I didn't freeze.
No. I have no idea what was going on with Janssen, but he did have some good numbers, good offensive numbers earlier in his career. Hopefully he can regain that.
Yeah. I mean, he's certainly going to get a shot here down the stretch with the Sharks, so might as well give him a look. As we mentioned at the top of the show, we are sponsored by PrizePicks. And you can get one free month of Stokastic Platinum, which is $120 value, gets you access to everything we have on the site, and up to $100 deposit match bonus when you sign up and make a deposit. It's a prop-based contest. It's basically like placing parlays. If you're not in a legal state for gambling, like Florida, Texas, California, PrizePicks is what you need to be on. Or looking at today's board, there's a couple that I actually like here. I think Kyle Connor over 1 point makes some sense in this matchup. And also Andrei Kuzmenko, the game we'll get to later, over 0.5 point. I like that over as well. So a couple overs. Make sure if you're interested, click the link in the description below. You'll get your 1 free month Stokastic Plus Platinum and your deposit match bonus when you sign up and make a deposit. So tail those picks. I'm not sure if Jake has some stuff up. I did not see his Twitter, but check it out. Sometimes he does. And let's move on.
And I'll also mention, don't forget, with Stokastic Plus, you get that NHL player prop tool. And this helps a lot with PrizePicks or just prop betting, shots and goal props. You have the projections that we have, the expected win percentage, the odds and the line that we're using. Obviously, they can change, and that's what OddsShopper is for, to find the best line. But it's really a helpful little tool. Rasmus Dahlin under 2.5 shots, 63% win percentage. So don't mind that over on PrizePicks tonight as well.
Yeah, I always, for some reason, I know that tool is coming, and then I just, skip over it. But, here we go. Let's move on to the next one, the Calgary Flames with a 2.8 total. Heading into Dallas, the Stars have a 3.1 total. Jacob Markstrom, Jake Ottinger confirmed. Max Domi sliding onto the line with Mason Marchment and Tyler Seguin. The Flames traded for Nick Ritchie, and he's in their top 6. Dylan Dubé moves down to the 4th line. Top line is now Tyler Toffoli with Elias Lindholm and Jacob Peltier. The second line is Kadri Huberdeau and Nick Ritchie. Third line of Backlund, Coleman, Mangiapane remains the same now. That is important, specifically for how Dallas matches. Because if Dallas 1 is going to go out against Huberdeau, Kadri, Nick Ritchie with Jacob Markstrom in net, I have a lot of interest in that line at 3%, despite them being, a bit not great recently. 3% for that line against a supposed good team in Calgary, but like that line, Kadri, Huberdeau, Nick Ritchie, I can't imagine is going to be good defensively. Jacob Markstrom's had an awful season. So if that is the case, I have some interest in the Stars top line. Other than that, this is a pretty tough matchup for the Flames. Maybe I go back to the Mangiapane Coleman back on line, but I think, as long as Dallas 1 has the matchup here, I think they're my favorite line in this game.
Yeah, I was looking at the matchups in the last game that they played, because Calgary was in Dallas back in January, and they used not the Seguin line, pardon me, but the Hintz line and the Johnston-Benn line against the opposing top 6. So they used Benn and Johnston and against line 2, and then Hintz against line 1. But more recently, they had been using Ben Johnston and Dodonov as the shutdown line. So I suspect that they're going to go out against Lindholm, Toffoli, and Peltier. That would leave Dallas 1 going out against the Kadri, Huberdeau, Nick Ritchie line, I assume. And that is a matchup that is going to greatly favor the Dallas top line. What I looked at was the Calgary second line with Milan Lucic, because remember when Lucic played with Kadri and Huberdeau for like a month? I don't see Ritchie and Lucic as that dissimilar of players in their impact on the line. Now, they're not the same guy. I think Nick Ritchie's a better scorer, for better or for worse. But I think they could have somewhat the same impact. They weren't that great when Lucic was there. 2.7 expected goals for, 2.6 expected goals against. Ritchie is a shooter / forechecker, so basically Milan Lucic, but shoots a little bit more. So I don't think that line is going to be very good at driving the play. And the Dallas top line has really been driving the play considerably well since the All-Star break. 3.4 expected goals for, 2.2 against in the 125 minutes since the All-Star break. They've been doing very, very well especially on the defensive side. That's over an 60% expected goal share. So they've been dominant. So I agree with you. I think Dallas, especially with the Calgary goaltending, the way that they've been playing, like things haven't really gotten better for the Flames in that regard. So there's not really a huge concern here for me. I don't think the Flames have given up more than 4 goals in their last 5 or 6 games, but they're not really scoring a ton either. Anyways, the Dallas top line, one of the better leverage spots on the night. I'll bring up the top stacks tool again real quick. Edmonton top line, Ottawa we'll get to next, and then Dallas for leverage. So pretty good leverage. I do think they come in a little bit higher than 3%. I wouldn't imagine. It's not going to be double digits though. So I'm with you. I do like Dallas one here. I think the other interesting line for me in this game is that Backlund, Coleman, Mangiapane line, right? Because it's kind of the same thing as with Buffalo. I know people kind of get caught up with how players are ordered on Twitter or on lineup sites. But if you look at Calgary's last 5 games, Backlund is first in ice time, and Mangiapane is second in ice time, and Coleman is 6th in ice time amongst their forwards. So it is their second. It might be their top line by ice time, no worse than their second line. And they've been just dominant basically all season long. Their last 115 minutes going to the All-Star break, 4.8 expected goals for, 1.8 against. They're going up against that Sagan line, Sagan and Marchment. I don't think it's a matchup that necessarily favors Dallas. That Calgary line's not coming in with much ownership, about between 1% and 2%. I think along with that San Jose Couture line, they're one of my favorite fillers on the slate here tonight. I get that it's tough to go to a line that's not really featured on the power play, but Dallas has a really good penalty kill anyways, and they don't give up a ton of power play opportunities. So I think focusing on the 5-on-5 matchup is the way to go here. I don't mind that Backlund line as a filler here tonight at all.
Yeah, and the Stars added Max Domi to that line, who is all offense, no defense. So that only enhances the offensive matchup for that Calgary line. So I do agree. I do like that line at 1%. Let's move on to the next one. Ottawa Senators, 3.8 total heading into Chicago. The Blackhawks have a 2.6 total. Cam Talbot probable. Alex Stalock confirmed. If you live on Narrative Street, Alex DeBrincat back in Chicago for the first time. First time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, first time since getting traded. On the top power play, on the second line. Like I like both of the top 6 lines here for Ottawa. I think either is fine. The top line coming in with a little bit less ownership, just because Brady Tkachuk and Tim Stützle are way more expensive than Drake Batherson and DeBrincat. So from an ownership standpoint, I think that top line makes a little bit more sense. Claude Giroux has been rolling as well, so it's a very good 5-on-5 matchup for that top line. I prefer the top line. You want to go to DeBrincat for Narrative Street, or just because it's a very good line, I think that's fine as well. On the Blackhawks side, I'm not sure this ownership is correct. Like, there's no way that this ownership is correct. It's gonna not be that high, but like, if it's remotely close, I have no interest in the Blackhawks.
Interesting ownership on Chicago. There is a lot here. The reason for that is they're $10,000 both lines. I'm sorry, 10,100 for the top line, 10,000 even for the second line. I think there could be a lot of ownership because Ottawa's not a great defensive team, and they are cheap enough where you can do like a McDavid Draisaitl. I think you can do McDavid Draisaitl Hyman and stick in one of those Chicago lines and put in Mrazek as your goalie. And I think at that point, you still only have like 28 or 2,900 left for defensemen, but you can do it. So I think you're going to see a fair bit of Edmonton power play / Chicago 1, or Edmonton power play / Chicago 2, or Edmonton power play / Chicago power play. I think those are going to be fairly popular combinations here tonight, especially with the way that Ottawa is playing so undisciplined lately. They're at 3.7 times shorthanded per game on the season, second most in the league, behind the Arizona Coyotes. If you look at just like the last 6 weeks, basically, Ottawa leads the league in time shorthanded per game by nearly a minute. Now, part of that is because they haven't been giving up a ton of goals. So, the longer the power play goes on without a goal being scored, the more time is added. But I don't think you're going to, necessarily rely on 900 goaltending on your penalty kill from Ottawa for the rest of the season. And taking the penalties the way that they have, it does bring guys like Taylor Radish or Philip Kurashev. It brings those power play guys into focus. It's just how good is that Chicago power play going to be without Kane, without Domi? Like, those are the two best playmakers that Chicago had. And I think Domi was leading them in goal scoring as well. So not sure how much they're actually going to be able to generate against Ottawa's penalty kill, but they should get lots of opportunities to do so. So I get the ownership in a sense, but I have no real interest in playing a Chicago stack. Like I said, if you want to one-off a Radish, one-off Athanasiou, something like that, I think it's perfectly fine. I can't get on board full stacking. I think it is about the Ottawa side here, and you're kind of seeing that 3.8 implied total on the road. Now, one thing we did mention in our Discord was, did Chicago get better defensively when they traded Jack Johnson? I think it's not an unreasonable question to ask. If you look at the penalty killing, him and Connor Murphy were really, really struggling on the penalty kill together this season. I think that just made Chicago's penalty kills struggle as a whole. And I'm wondering if Jack Johnson just being traded back to Colorado just doesn't improve their penalty kill organically. Connor Murphy does have better goals against numbers away from Johnson than with him, so it makes kind of makes sense. But the Chicago penalty kill have been getting better anyway. I was looking over their last 20 games, like they've been fine to good, which is surprising. But Ottawa's power play has been rolling. Stützle has almost 40 shots in his last 10 games. He's not just a playmaker; he can do both. I think if you want to leave off Giroux and add in DeBrincat, make it a full power play stack, I think that's just fine. I really do like Tall-Star break, 3.8 expected goals for, only 2 against per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. Like I said, Stützle's been shooting a lot. Kachuk's been shooting a lot. Like you mentioned, Giroux's been on a tear recently. They added Jacob Chikrin, so now they get a seasoned power play defenseman to use on the second power play unit for whenever they get some ice time alongside Jake Sanderson. So I don't mind going to Ottawa too here. I'm not worried about any sort of matchup concern. I think I would just probably go with the line that's playing better at the moment, and that's the Ottawa top line. So I really do like Stützle, Giroux, and Kachuk here tonight. I just wonder if they don't come in with a little bit more ownership than we're showing. Can't imagine that line's going to be single digits on a 6-game slate against the Blackhawks.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Tim Stützle's season, he's in like rarefied air for how good his season's been at his age. Like, if you redraft that draft, which is silly to even talk about, but he would go number 1.
Yeah.
To the Rangers. Anyway, don't want to talk about the Rangers today. That just made me sad. Anyway, we can get you a BetMGM first bet insurance up to $1,000 and 1 free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum for free. Now, if you're in a state that, if you're not doing PrizePicks and you want a sports book, the states kind of don't really overlap here. So if you're in one of those states that PrizePicks is the only thing, chances are the other states will have a sports book, and BetMGM you can get, your first bet insurance up to $1,000 and 1 free month Stokastic Plus Platinum for free. Stokastic Plus Platinum, as I mentioned in the first read, $120 value. Get you every tool on our site for every sport. And all you got to do is deposit at least $10. You can do it up to $1,000, depending on your risk tolerance for a free bet. You place a bet on whatever you want. When that bet settles, MGM will shoot you an email with how to get your free subscription to Stokastic. You don't even need to win the bet. So yeah, you get that. You get the Stokastic plus Platinum. It's a no-brainer. Click the link in the description below or use the promo code Platinum Sub when you are signing up. And remember, the legal age for gambling in most states is 21. And if you or someone else you know has a gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. Let's move on to the final two games of the night here. Washington Capitals with a 3 total heading into Los Angeles. The Kings have a 3.5 total. Darcy Kemper probable. Phoenix Copley is confirmed. Interestingly enough, not too much ownership on either side here. I don't have too much interest in the Caps here tonight. Now, low-owned one-off Ovechkin will be very contrarian on this slate because you have McDavid, you have Draisaitl, you have Tage Thompson, you have Jason Robertson, you have Kyle Connor. The list goes on and on and on. Los Angeles goaltending is kind of pedestrian. And the Kings penalty kill, while not awful, it's not elite. So I think, one off Ovechkin is an interesting play on the slate with his ownership. But for me, I'm more on the Kings side here. The Fiala Dino Arvidsson line coming in around double digits is fine. I think, that line is fine. But Kopitar, Kempe, Byfield coming in half the ownership here. Get 2 guys on the top power play. I don't know. I kind of dig that Kopitar, Kempe, Byfield line.
Yeah, I'm glad you dig them because I do like that line as well. I talked about them on Twitter a little bit last week, and one thing about Byfield being on that top line is I think Byfield now is playing the role that Anze Kopitar played on that line like 5 years ago, which is kind of like the forechecker. I don't want to say facilitator, but kind of. If you watch, I watched the Kings game against Montreal last week, and I've only seen a couple Kings games with Byfield on the top line, but the games that I watched and the clips that I've seen, he looks like one of the best forecheckers in the NHL, period. Like, not just on this team.
He's huge.
There are a number of clips where a team's on like a 3-on-2 or a 4-on-3 or something like that, and then you just see Byfield come streaking from the offensive zone, and he catches up with the play to even it out at a 3-on-3 or something like that. Like, he is doing tremendous work both in the defensive zone, digging pucks out, and in the offensive zone, retrieving pucks. So I think he's kind of playing that facilitator role, and I think that's why you're seeing pretty good offensive numbers from the top line. And I don't mean just the scoring, because obviously, Kempe had a stretch where he had 10 goals in 10 games or something like that. Like, Kopitar has been scoring a pile lately. He had that, what was it, the 4-goal game in Winnipeg, or is it just a hat trick? Anyways, they've been scoring a lot. And they've been generating a lot as well. Since February 1st, 3.1 expected goals for per 60 minutes. That's pretty high for a Kopitar line in the year 2023. Maybe 6 or 7 years ago would have been a different story, but they've been generating a lot. They've been controlling the play. Kempe has 35 shots in his last 10 games, 3.5 shots per game. Like, he's really been firing the puck. The problem is Byfield, as that facilitator, he's not getting involved in a lot of the play, right? It's kind of like he, chips the puck to an open spot to get it to Kopitar and Kempe, and then those two go to work offensively, right? And that's why you're seeing, Byfield, I think he only has 12 shots in his last 10 games, despite playing, around 14 minutes or something like that, 13, 14 minutes. He's not really shooting much. Like, he has assists in 3 straight games because of all the forechecking he does. But, if he goes out and gets 6.5 DK points, it's really not. I mean, it's fine for 3,100, but it's not great. So I do like the Kings top line. The problem is they have been using that Fiala line, and I don't want to say it's a problem for the Kopitar line. It'll help the Kopitar line. The problem for the Fiala line is that with the way that Byfield has really helped the Kings top line, they have switched things around and gone back to using Kopitar in a shutdown role. And tonight that means going out against the Washington top line, Ovechkin, Wilson, and Kuznetsov. Now, there isn't a huge sample there, obviously. Wilson hasn't played a lot for Washington this year because of his knee injury. And when he did come back, he was playing on the second and third lines. But Wilson and Ovechkin are up to about 60 minutes together this season. 4.8 expected goals against per 60 minutes, 5 actual goals against per 60 minutes, 71 shot attempts against per 60 minutes. Those are horrific defensive numbers. Small sample, only been a few games, don't know what's going to happen. But don't forget, Washington has quite a few injuries on the blue line, like injuries and defensemen traded, right? John Carlson still injured. Dmitry Orlov traded. Who else was it? Nick Jensen is injured. They traded Eric Gustafsson. Like 5 of the 6 defensemen that would probably be in the starting lineup if everybody was healthy and still on the roster are out. So
you know what Sam Dean does? Take penalties.
Yeah, well, that. So now, Trevor Van Riemsdyk's probably going to play like 25 minutes. Like, Matt Irwin's probably going to play like 19, 20 minutes or something like that. Like, this is a pretty banged up Washington blue line. So I think I would go, and I think Kopitar, Kempe, Byfield are in the better 5-on-5 matchup going out against Kuznetsov, Wilson, and Ovechkin. So that's the line I would go to as well. If you want to full stack them, go right ahead. If you want to leave Byfield off and add in a Fiala or something like that for a power play stack, I think you can do that. But the Washington penalty kill has generally been very good this year, and they don't take a lot of penalties. So I think this might be a case where I leave Byfield and not turn it into a power play stack, but it's fine to do. I wouldn't say no to anything like that. So Kings 1 over Kings 2 for me, but I think both lines are definitely in play here. On the Washington side, Strome, Oshie, and Milano, they're getting up to a workable sample now, 65 minutes together, 2.7 expected goals for, 4.7 actual goals. Obviously, they've been running hot percentage-wise, shooting over 16%. But, it looks like a talented line. Oshie, I think, has started to, kind of turn his play around after, a pretty brutal stretch after he returned from injury. So I kind of don't mind that line. Like, they're not coming in with a ton of ownership either. If you want to just two-man like Milano and Strome or something like that, I think that's perfectly fine. There's really not a lot. Oh, sorry, Craig Smith is on that line. I don't know why I said Oshie. There is some decent Washington depth players here, and there's not much ownership. And, the Kings goaltending is what the Kings goaltending has basically been all season, which is very shaky, even Phoenix Copley of late. So I don't mind like a Strome Milano 2-man, super cheap 2-man, or, if you want to do like a Backstrom Oshie 2-man or something like that. I think those are perfectly fine. I honestly think I'd go with your play and just one off Alex Ovechkin, but I do think there are nice 2-mans in the Washington depth here that you can use with your expensive stacks elsewhere. All that being said, I agree. I think the Kopitar line is my favorite line in this game.
Yeah, I mean, even take out this year's numbers with Ovechkin, Kuznetsov, Wilson. Like, historically, they've never been good defensively. So, yeah, I do really like that Kopitar line. Let's get to the last game of the night.
No, real quick, I'm just adding them to the lineup builder because I had been building a lineup. This is the lineup builder that we have here. We have DraftKings pulled up. You can see the stack projection for each line, the player projection, what their ownership is going to be, both on DraftKings and FanDuel. I put in Buffalo one with Jack Gwynn, put in Los Angeles one. I don't know what we're going to do with goalies and defensemen just yet. We're going to talk about those at the end of the game, but it seems like, even if I put in, Jake Ottinger right now, I can probably still fit a fairly expensive defenseman. So it does leave some pretty good flexibility with guys like Jack Quinn and Quentin Byfield on top lines here tonight.
Yeah. And Vancouver just confirmed a min-price goalie on DraftKings.
Oh, did they?
They did. Nashville Predators with a 3 total heading into Vancouver. The Canucks have a 3 total. UC Saros probable. Min-price Arturs Silovs confirmed for the Canucks. Our boy, he actually kind of was our boy for a little bit there. John Leonard, formerly of the Sharks, on the top line with the Predators, with Cody Glass and Matt Duchene. I don't know. That line's getting double-digit ownership for some reason. I mean, it is the Canucks, so who knows? I mean, my interest here is on the Canucks side, specifically the Pettersson, Kuzmenko, Beauvillier line. They're coming in double digits, but I think it's fine. It's a very good power play matchup. Nashville's penalty kill gives us a ton of shots against. Saros just has, it's always a question of how much can Saros save them. That line has been very good. That's where I want to go. Like JT Miller, Besser getting more ownership than Pettersson, Kuzmenko here. It's a price thing. But, I much prefer that fully correlated line. Nashville, I guess you got to consider it. I mean, Vancouver is just an abomination defensively. So I don't know if you have to full stack, but I think you can pull some, pieces like Luke Evangelista is on the top power play unit at 2,600. I think he's going to be very, very popular with Edmonton stacks and stuff like that. But I don't think I'd full stack anything. Maybe I'll take a piece or two.
Yeah, and I was looking at the way that Vancouver matched up over the weekend against Toronto, and they used JT Miller and Brock Besser in a shutdown role against the Matthews line.
I mean, who's the coach? Come on. He's not very good.
So tonight, I assume it's going to be JT Miller and Brock Besser again going out against that Glass Duchene line, Glass, Duchene, John Leonard. Glass and Duchene have pretty bad numbers this year without Philip Forsberg. That's the difference that's he's made on the top line. Without Philip Forsberg, 1.9 expected goals for, 3.6 expected goals against at 5-on-5. What's helping that line is that they have an 1147 PDO, which that's for people that like that's a PDO of 11 over 1140, and like basically anything for a line over like 1030, and I'm like, think they're starting to run a bit hot now. Skilled lines will naturally have better shooting percentages and can drive up the PDO a little bit. 1147 is one of those, like, this is going to crash hard soon, and that's the matchup going into Nashville 1. So it's one of those things. It's like the stoppable force meets the movable object. It's like, I'm not worried about the defense from Miller and Besser. Like, I was looking just Phil DiGiuseppe and JT Miller together. 47% of the shot attempt share when they're on the ice, 62 shot attempts against per 60 minutes. Like, they're not good defensively. It's not going to be a big problem for that Nashville line. It's just the ownership, right? They're coming in triple their top two stack probability. That's basically the only reason that I wouldn't want to play a lot of Nashville here is like they're kind of like that Chicago chalk. Whereas you look over on Washington and, it's a lot of like low percentage lines, 1%, 2%, 3%. Same thing with San Jose, like 1%, 2%, 3%. I think I would rather go to those teams for my cheap guys than Nashville here tonight. But with the ice time they're going to get, top power play minutes, the Vancouver penalty kill, like, people have been talking about how good the Vancouver penalty kill has been lately. And I went and looked at the actual numbers, and it's the third most shots against per minute while they're on the PK. It's just, their goalies have just been saving more shots. Like, that's just what it is. It's not like the penalty kill itself is improved. It's the, goaltenders have been better. Whether that continues, I guess we'll find out. So not super concerned about the Vancouver matchup for Nashville. It's just an ownership matter. And, there's not a whole lot I'd rather play elsewhere. Like that Train and Smith line. I don't think it would surprise anybody, but they're not that good. With Cole Smith there, 38 shot attempts for, 58 against. That's a 40% shot attempt share. Like, neither of these top Nashville lines are going to be very good. So I prefer the Vancouver line, top line easily here. It's easily my favorite line in this game. Pettersson, Kuzmenko, Beauvillier. It sucks that Beauvillier got yeeted to the second power play unit, but, c'est la vie. That top line has been very good. As a unit, 3.3 expected goals for, 2.1 against per 60 minutes, 3.8 actual goals for. Beauvillier still probably will play about 16 minutes. So perfectly fine to use. If you want to take Bo off and put Besser or Miller there for a power play stack, I think that's perfectly fine. But it is that Vancouver top line I like best in this game. Not particularly close, and way more than the JT Miller Besser line. And I probably just sealed my own fate by saying that.
Oh no! If you didn't say it, I was. So we sealed our own fate there. But I agree with you. That is my favorite line in this game. Coming up after us, So Rare NBA show at 3 p.m. with Greg and Neil. It's coming up at the top of the hour in 6 minutes. So if you're into that, if you're an NFT guy, So Rare has some really cool stuff. So check out that show if you are interested. We have a couple minutes to talk some goalies, D-men, and hat trick picks. So who are you liking on the blue line?
It's an interesting slate for expensive defensemen because, I think Roman Josi will probably draw a fair bit of ownership in that Nashville matchup, which I think makes sense, even though he's 9K. Anybody not playing Edmonton is probably going to strongly be considering Roman Josi in the lineup here tonight. So it'll be interesting to see where ownership lands. But I do like Josi. The other two expensive defensemen I like here tonight are Shabbat and Josh Morrissey. I don't think that's really a big surprise. But, here's the thing is I think it's a stars or scrubs night for defensemen for me. Darnell Nurse, yeah, he's fine. Quinn Hughes, he's fine because it's a good matchup against Nashville. Noah Hannafin, I think Noah Hannafin might be my favorite defenseman in that 4 to 6K range just because he's probably going to play 22, 23 minutes and he's in that low 4K on DraftKings, which I think is pretty reasonable even in a tough matchup. So maybe Hannafin, maybe Matthias Ekholm, but there's not a lot in that mid-price range that I really, really like. I don't like Anderson. I don't like, Haskinen's getting a little too expensive. Drew Doughty doesn't really do a whole lot. As somebody in our chat mentioned, Sean Dursey, his ice time got nuked because of Vladislav Gavrikov being brought in. That's the thing with Los Angeles is Doughty's probably going to play 26 minutes, Anderson 22, 23, and then everybody else 16 to 18. So there's just not a lot on that blue line. But there are a lot of cheap guys I like here tonight. With Matthias Samuelsson out, I do like Henry Jokiharju. Kyle Burrows, if you need a $2,500 defenseman from Vancouver, he should probably play about 18 minutes here tonight. Our boy, Yanni Hakanpää, playing the second most minutes behind Miro Heiskanen of late. He's under 3K on DraftKings as well. Matt Benning for San Jose. I can't remember exactly what happened in that last game, but I seem to remember our boss Jake Hari mentioning Benning hit the block bonus in the first period. So I do like Benning. Caleb Jones as well from Chicago, running a second power play unit, probably the number 2 or number 3 defenseman there now, and obviously Rasmus Sandin running the power play for Washington. So those are some of the cheap guys I like here tonight. What about goalies? Because I had Demko near the top of my list. Are we playing Silovs here tonight?
Me too. I don't know. Maybe. Nashville's pretty bad, but the problem is Vancouver is really bad. So min price, if he gets me 7 to 10 DK points, maybe. But you're looking at these other options. Do you want to play Stalock at 6,900? I don't know. Do you want to play Jacob Marchand at 7,500?
I don't mind Stalock at home at that price.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's just the cheap options are an absolute circus because you have min price, right? Then you have, Stalock at 6,900, Markstrom 7,500, James Reimer, who I don't mind as well at 7,100, or Craig Anderson. So but if you're spending up, who are you spending up for? Saros maybe 7,800, Phoenix Copley.
Jake Ottinger was the one that came to mind for me. 7,900 at home. Calgary, you and I talk about it all the time. They generate a lot of shot attempts, but not a lot of quality. And I don't mind Ottinger at 7,900, even though there is some pretty good cheap goalies here tonight at home, I think.
Yeah, he's sticking out for sure. A couple of seconds left. Who you liking for your hat trick pick?
That's a pretty good question. I'm going to go with El Nino himself. I'm going to go with Nino Niederreiter tonight here for my hat trick pick. And just real quick, finished out the lineup here. I put Hakanpää and Jake Ottinger in. So Hakanpää on the blue line, Ottinger in net, and I put Darnell Nurse because we had 5,600, even though I don't really like that mid-price range. So I put Nurse in as well. So that's the lineup. Buffalo 1, Los Angeles 1, Ottinger and Hakanpää, DG stack, and then Nurse 1 off. Little sample lineup here tonight using our lineup builder. Projects for 91.5 points. Probably not a lot, but I don't mind that lineup actually.
Yeah. We got to get out of here. We will be back tomorrow. Good luck, everybody. My hat trick pick, Tage Thompson. We'll see you tomorrow. Good luck, everybody.
Good luck, everyone.